Well, good evening, everyone. We're delighted to have you join us for tonight's web chat with the University of Wisconsin at Madison. I'm Charlie Hoslet, the Vice Chancellor for University Relations here at UW, and I'll be moderating tonight's panel. We're excited to share our plans for the fall and to answer your questions. The bulk of our plans are detailed on our Smart Restart website, which is updated frequently as our plans evolve and details get finalized. You can visit the website at www.smartrestart, that's one word, .wisc.edu. That can be your source for up-to-date information on all of our reopening plans. For tonight, however, if you do have a question you'd like to ask, you can submit it as a comment. Our panelists will get through as many questions as we can in the next hour. I want to let you know that this presentation is being captioned and interpreted. Those links are listed in the description window under the video panel on the YouTube page. Now, let me introduce tonight's panelists, but in the interest of time, we won't give everyone's full bios. Joining us tonight are Chancellor Rebecca Blank, Andre Phillips, Director of Admissions and Recruitment, Jake Baggett, Executive Director of University Health Services, and Jeff Novak, Director of University Housing. And now I'll turn it over to Chancellor Blank.
Thank you, Charlie. And thanks to everyone for coming on this evening. I'm looking forward to seeing all of the students on campus come the fall, and I'm looking forward to this next semester. We are ready to welcome students back to campus. For the past several weeks, a group of representatives from across campus has been working on a reopening plan. Starting last week, we began to share the details of that plan, which we're calling Smart Restart, with students, families, faculty, and staff. Our top priorities are keeping the community healthy while delivering a world-class educational experience. We're following public health guidance from local, state, federal, and medical authorities, and we'll be using a variety of health protocols, such as face coverings, physical distancing, cleaning, and regular testing. While many classes will be offered in person, we will use virtual instruction as well, including for those students who aren't able to come to campus this fall. This hybrid approach allows us to be flexible and to provide protection to our students, our faculty, and our staff. As one of the world's leading research institutions, we are very well equipped to think about how we meet this challenge. Now, last week's announcement was just the beginning. Reopening is a complex process. There are a lot of moving parts to it, and it's going to require changes to virtually every aspect of our operations. We'll be sharing additional information over the summer with all of you, as Charlie noted. We're also prepared to adjust our plans if things happen out there that affect what we have to do in here. But let me stop with that because I primarily am here tonight to answer your question. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chancellor. Let's jump into our questions from those who are watching. And again, if you have a question, you can submit it as a comment and we'll get through just as many as we can. Chancellor, I wonder if you can start by talking a bit about how the decision to reopen was made.
So as noted, for more than a month, we've had a whole variety of groups across campus working on this. We've had about 12 or 15 of some of our top medical and public health people thinking about how we do testing, who we need to test, how many, how we set that all up. We've had another group of faculty, of staff, of graduate students, of our IT staff working on instruction. The question is both what classes are offered virtually and which are offered in person. How do we decide that? How do we make sure the quality of those virtual classes is as high as it can possibly be? And how do we set up a classroom so that it's a safe classroom for both the faculty and the students? What type of health protocols do we need to have? And we've had groups working on all of those questions and are more than willing to come back and talk about any of them if people are interested.
Great. Thanks for that. Question that we've received, Chancellor, is about the academic calendar. People have noted that a number of other schools, other universities around the country have decided to start a little bit earlier, mid-August and so forth. Was that considered here at UW-Madison?
Yeah, we thought about that a lot, and we've got a problem with that. There's a state law that tells us we can't start till after September 1st. And we discussed that with a few of our state legislative leaders, but we just weren't going to get that done. So we are starting the 2nd of September as originally planned, but as our plans note, we will turn everything into virtual instruction after Thanksgiving. So students who don't want to come back will not have to come back should there be an upsurge in infections as the weather gets cold and people start staying inside. That means there'll be 9 days of instruction virtually at the very end of the semester.
Great. Next question would come is for Jeff Novak, our Director of Housing. Jeff, the person asks, one of my greatest concerns is how the dorms will be kept safe. The CDC guidelines classify full dorms as high risk. Can you speak to that?
Thank you, Charlie. And thank you for the question. And thanks to all who have chosen to live on campus with your student or you, the student. Absolutely, certainly the guidelines are there. We're following those and consulting our health professionals here on campus, our environmental health and safety team. And we are prepared to try to make this the safest place any student can live. You know, the nature of our high frequency restrooms does bring in an element that's a little different, but our teams will be developing and have developed procedures for frequent sanitation and disinfecting, more so than I like to say we do in our own homes. But at the end of the day, we're going to rely on our students to do their part as well to make sure this is a great place for us all to live. So we will be cleaning, disinfecting more often. I don't want to minimize that our crews do a wonderful time all the time prior to COVID, but we will be on top of it and working hard to provide a safe and healthy environment for your student.
Thanks, Jeff. Next question is for Andre. Andre, again, is our Director of Admissions and Recruitment. Andre, the question is, when do I have to complete my placement tests?
Sure. Thank you, Charlie. And along with everyone else on the call, we thank each and every one of you for joining us this evening. In fact, student orientation began today, and we will have student orientation throughout the summer. So opportunities for students to register for their fall, and throughout the summer there will be opportunities for students if the placement exams, the College Board sponsor placement exams were not taken earlier. We're working very closely gaining up-to-date information from the College Board. We would encourage you to reach out to our office or directly to the College Board if there's a question about a placement exam. They are working as carefully as possible and as broadly as possible to make those examinations available. They will get the testing results to us in time enough for us to adjudicate whatever credit there might be. And in a similar fashion, working very closely with our student orientation program, as I mentioned at the outset, throughout the summer to make sure that by fall, students are aware of credit they may have received and their placement and how it will work throughout their first year tenure.
Thanks, Andre. This is a two-part question. I'm going to throw it first to Jake and then in the second part to the Chancellor. Jake, the question is, my son has some health conditions. What should he be doing? And then the second part of that question, Chancellor, is can a person take classes totally online and not have to be on campus in person this semester or this year? Jake, you want to start? Jake, I'm afraid you're on mute. Can you unmute your microphone?
Forgive me. Thank you, Charlie, and thank you for the question. First of all, I would just encourage you to check with your family physician before coming to campus to see if they have any added advice. But I also want to assure you that we've taken all the necessary steps and precautions in place, including added measures of testing and so forth to support a healthy campus environment. Also, I would just encourage your student to contact the University Health Services and connect with a provider here early so that we can help support you throughout your time while you're here. Thank you for that question.
Great. Chancellor, do you want to talk to the question of whether a student could
Yes.
take classes online?
We know that there are going to be some students who either it doesn't make sense for them to come because of their health conditions and they need to be home, or some students who just aren't going to get here. Some of our international students, I think, are not going to make it to the States because of various travel and visa restrictions. So we have asked every department to put together a set of online courses that can allow students to make progress in their degree. Now, that's easiest done for freshmen than almost any other class because many freshmen take some of those big intro online classes to start with. But we are also offering a number of small class experiences, which would be both in person and online, that we want freshmen to take so they have some chance for those smaller discussion groups, even if they aren't there in person. But we have advisors set aside to work with our at-home students. And that's something that we really have planned for. And I hope that if your student has to be home this semester, that they will nonetheless find a way to really move their education forward.
Chancellor, we've got a bit of a follow-up question for that that I'll come back to you with. As you've noted, we're going to be in a hybrid model this year where some courses will be on campus and some will be online. Question is, when will students know which courses or sections will be online and which ones won't?
So, we're working on our schedule, and this is a complex issue this year because we literally are going into every classroom and deciding what does physical distancing mean in this classroom and how many students can it contain. The result is that we're going to need larger classrooms for smaller classes, and it's one reason we're going online is we don't have a class big enough to, if you have 200 students in your class, to physically distance. But that means we'll have limited classrooms. And one impact of that is that we're going to start classes first thing in the morning, and we're going to be running them through the evening up until 9 or so on most weekdays. We may even sit down for this, run a few Saturday classes if we have to. But the result is we have to work a schedule out as to what's online and what isn't, and department by department, we're working with them. I'm hoping we're going to be able to do scheduling by the third week of July. That is what we're aiming for. At worst, I think it'll be the fourth week, but I do realize students will know their schedule later than usual because any schedule you might have looked at this spring, because of the changes in classes and class times, is going to shift around. And of course, once you get that schedule, it may be you've got some conflicts and you're going to have to call your advisor and work those out and decide which classes you really need to take.
Next will be a bit of a tag team answer between Jeff Novak, the Director of Housing, and Jake Baggett, our Director of University Housing. Question is, what is the process for students, presumably in the dorms, in this case, who test positive for COVID? Will they be quarantined in their room and not allowed to leave? Would they be asked to go home? How are we going to handle that, Jeff?
Great question. For those students, and hopefully there aren't many, but if they do test positive, they will be moved to a separate location that we have identified. We've set aside over 350 spaces, but certainly don't feel that we will hopefully need that many. And they will be required to go there for 14 days to isolate. We've got a team dedicated to the students that will be in isolation. We will provide food delivery to them on a daily basis, and our staff will check in with them medically, emotionally, and physically, and make sure that their needs are being met. But we do want to say that those that are positive will be required to go there for 14 days and will be required to stay there for 14 days. So to the respondent's question, it would be ideal for some if they have the convenience of going home, if they're local. That might be a place that they'd perhaps like to remain while the 14 days lapses.
Jake, you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Jeff. That was a really good description of, I think, a really strong system of support around that. The University Health Services and contact tracers employed here at UHS and by the campus will be there to support them throughout that period of time as well.
Thanks, Jake. Back to Andre from Admissions and Recruitment. Can you clarify the difference between deciding to defer and taking a gap year?
Sure. Thank you for the question. And this one will be brief. For students who, we'll start with gap year. For students who wish to take a gap year, it's an agreed upon set of expectations of what students would do during that period of time that may include some approved coursework. For students who ask for a deferral, and typically a gap year is just that, it's a full academic year. For students who ask to simply defer, there is an expectation that students may go on a particular experience, may decide to work, may engage in some activity that's non-graded coursework or some particular experience, with the expectation that whatever they're engaged in during the deferral period, they will not receive they will not take coursework for credit or receive credit in some sort of way.
Okay, thank you. Chancellor, back to you with this question. We know there have been issues for international students, difficulties getting visas because of the closures of consulates around the world, potentially problems with air travel getting back to the U.S. Do we expect to see some international students on campus this year?
So they're definitely going to be international students on campus. A good number of our students, even our incoming freshmen, have been in the United States for high school. So that means they already have a visa. Many of them are here over the summer, didn't go home, and will have no problem with showing up. All of that said, those who weren't here, who are in their home country, and particularly in home countries where visas are being restricted, we do think some of them will not be able to make it. And it's one reason we want to make sure we've got a good course load for students who aren't able to be on campus. But my guess is we'll have a good number of international students here. And similarly with our returning students, many of them stayed on campus over the summer. And we've got a good number of graduate students who've been on campus and will not have visa problems and will be able to be here. So it'll be a mix.
Great, thank you. Jeff Novak, we've got a question about food plans, both for students who are in the dorms, but also students who might be off campus. Can you talk through how all that's going to work?
Sure. Thank you, Charlie. Yes, for this year, for the students that are in our halls, the access to our dining halls is going to be restricted for them only, in large part for risk reduction, but also on guidelines from health folks and professionals for reduced seating. So in order to have enough seating in our facilities right now, we need to limit the access to those that are living with us on campus. Wonderful, though, on our campus, we have two great student unions that have lots of dining facilities and eateries in them, and throughout academic buildings, multiple locations as well, that students that are residing off campus can fully take advantage of when they're on campus to eat. Additionally, hopefully, as we get a better idea, as things continue to unfold in the fall semester, we might be able to open our facilities, and that's the 6 main dining halls for residential students, to more than just our residents. Hopefully, that would be a wonderful thing for all of us.
Very good. Jeff, we're going to stick with you for this next question, which has to do with move-in dates. Classes, of course, start on September 2nd. Question is, what are move-in dates for students? And also, can parents bring them? Are the students supposed to do this on their own? How is all that going to work?
Right. Yeah. Well, hopefully, we're anticipating and hope to get that out very soon. Right now, we're looking at a dispersed move-in process of potentially 5 to 7 days before classes begin. So if you're making plans, and we hope to get that very soon, we know that some that are traveling need to get on those arrangements, but right now you can use as a guide 7 days prior to that first day of class. We're also exploring some options for those that are close by, able to do so. We'd love for you to do so as well. Come early, drop some belongings off, not have your student check in or start living there, and then return as we get closer to the actual first day of classes. We hope to get assignments out very soon. We know how important that is, and you want to make some plans. once we as a campus made the announcement that we were going to be in this format and have the occupancy in our halls, that kicked in everything into motion that we have to do to prepare to make assignments. So thank you for your patience and flexibility. But if you're wanting to keep a window open, I'd plan for those 7 days prior to the first day of class being open on your schedule.
Thanks, Jeff. Jake, I'm going to go to you with this next question, but I'm guessing the chancellor might want to chime in here as well. It's a very important issue. It has to do with testing for COVID here on campus. Talk a little bit about that. How often are students being tested? Is it just students in the residential halls or all students? Is there any cost to the students to get tested?
In brief, then I'll certainly let the chancellor add to that. So testing availability will be widespread. Essentially, students or other members of the community will be able to get testing as often as they need it. So we'll have drop-in testing readily available. And then students living in the residence halls, as another example, will get tested on a regular basis, whether, just to make sure that we're staying on top and identify any cases early and support those students as necessary. So again, testing will be readily available. Chancellor?
Yeah, we've been calling this the 3-part testing plan. We'll have drop-in testing centers. Anyone in the community at any point in time can stop by and get a test. Secondly, we're going to have surveillance testing across campus, which is the process of basically sampling what's happening across campus in a way that if indeed there would be some uptick in infections, we know it quite quickly. That means many people will never get tested, but some subgroup may indeed be tested through that surveillance testing. And then thirdly, we have targeted testing for a few groups that we think we need to test regularly. And most notably, there are the students in the dorms that we're going to aim to test about every 2 weeks or so. And one of the conditions of being in the dorms is that you need to agree to get tested regularly. We think that's very important for keeping infections out of the dorms and keeping the students safe.
Thanks, Chancellor. Jake, I want to go back to you for a second. Question, if the student is in private housing, not living in our residence halls, but elsewhere, can you talk about their access to campus health facilities, university health services, and also what about access to quarantine facilities if they were to need those?
Thank you, Charlie. Right. So all students, whether you're a resident of campus or not, will have complete access to the university health services. We'll continue to offer a number of services on a virtual basis, but many in-person services as well. So they should be able to get the full range of services that they've been accustomed to. In addition to that, if a student does test positive and they are not a resident of the campus, we'll work in conjunction with the county health department and support them in their off-campus residence in a quarantine or self-isolation mode. So we'll continue to provide them the same supports in terms of follow-up, how they're doing, and what other kinds of support they might need during that process. And then in some cases, students may be able to safely conduct that quarantine period while they're residing at the residence.
Thanks, Jake. I want to go back just very quickly to the question about move-in. I know that for when people are moving in, we want to provide a safe distancing process. We're going to restrict each residence to bringing 2 helpers or guests to help them during move-in. So I'm afraid the whole family can't come this year, and someone will probably be happy about that. Again, we're taking all of the questions tonight, even if we can't get to them during the web chat. We'll be loading them into our FAQs and putting them on the website. Again, that's smartrestart.wisc.edu. Chancellor, question coming in, should we buy or bring masks, or will the campus be providing them? And are students going to be required to wear them when they're on campus?
Yeah, that's a very important question, and masking is an important part of the health protocols. Our requirement is that if you are indoors in a public space, you need to have a mask on, and that includes classrooms. I'm assuming that every faculty member who is teaching in person is going to start that class by saying, if you're going to be in this class in person, you need to be wearing a mask, and that's for the safety of the other students and the instructor. Outside, people are going to go jog along the lakefront at 5:30 in the morning. They're not going to wear a mask, and I understand that. But if you are in an outside setting, that's really crowded, and that will occasionally happen, we really would strongly recommend you wear masks then too. My guess is that many students are going to arrive with masks, but we're also planning to pass a few out, of those cloth masks to students. And we will make available, certainly for students in the dorms, if they forget their mask, if their strap over their ear breaks, if they're walking into a classroom and they don't have a mask, we are going to make those disposable masks available, because we want everyone to be masked on inside public spaces.
Thanks, Chancellor. I'm going to stick with you for this next question. We're getting ready for first semester, but people are, of course, are already thinking about second semester. Do we know yet what our plans are for that, or is it a little too early to tell?
So I am hoping that second semester is going to look a lot like first semester. That we live with a lot of uncertainty right now. My expectation at this point is it will start at the regularly announced time and end at the regularly announced time. But we're not going to make any decisions about that as a final decision until we're into the fall semester and making sure that everything is working the way that it needs to. So we'll tell you more about the spring. Hopefully it's going to run a lot like the fall, but stay tuned.
Great. I think this next question is for Andre, but if others want to jump in, please do. The question is, if a student decides not to attend classes in person, but wants to just enroll online, how do they let the university know that that's what their plan is?
Thank you, Charlie. First, of course, let us know. Certainly contact the student orientation office, and the student orientation office, or we can connect you to the student orientation office, will ensure that you are registered for all of your classes online. That's a straightforward process. We obviously would like to know what decisions students will make about their plans for the fall. Particularly so, and I'll add this just very, very quickly, as Chancellor mentioned, for some students, particularly our international students who are not able to secure a visa appointment or get to campus, please let us know that you're not able to join us in the fall. You're not going to participate or able to participate in an online experience. For I-20 purposes, we need to go back and restart that process. Our ask for any of our admitted students, our first year students, please stay in touch with us so that we can provide, as Chancellor suggested earlier, decisions are being made on a regular basis, and this will help us help you as you go through the process.
Thank you, Andre. Of course, we're in the middle of the city of Madison. We're not isolated unto ourselves. And so questions come in about, what do we know about what the city of Madison is requiring? I know that we're in close coordination with the public health officials there. So Jake, I'm going to start with you, and if you can talk a little bit about what the public health guidance is for the city, and then Chancellor, ask you to add in if you'd like to anything.
Thank you, Charlie. And of course, as you indicated, we've been working very closely with the public health department here at the city of Madison and Dane County, and have been really coordinating our policies and procedures to align as closely as possible with theirs, and to support the overall goals of protecting our community. So they have put in place and have, for a while, some really clear guidelines around the number of individuals that can gather at one place, how many folks can attend a restaurant, and being really very clear about what the social distancing and face masks recommendations are. And I think that you'll find that the transition for students between those spaces will be relatively easy and align with our overall goals.
Chancellor, I know you've been in contact with the city leadership, county leadership. What do you have to add?
Yeah, Madison is a place that has not seen an explosion of infections. We sort of had a steady level of infections over time at a reasonably low level. And I think much of that is because it's an area that's followed health guidance. And we've had some very strong health guidance out of both the city and the county. I went to a march over racial justice organized by the Black pastors in town a couple of weeks ago. And I went there a little hesitantly thinking, if people aren't masked, I'm not staying. And the whole crowd was masked. It was, it was very interesting. So it is a place that's following these protocols reasonably well. Not everyone, and it's going to be a challenge, particularly to get 18 to 22-year-olds to understand that in certain places and on certain occasions, they need to follow these health protocols.
Thank you. Jake, we're going to go back to you for this question. For our listeners, the University Health Service, which Jake heads up, is part of the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs group on campus. And so this is a question about student life more generally. What do we expect the experience to be like? Will there be student organizations? Are we going to have events? Is the union going to be open? What about recreation and well-being?
Right. So we're working on all of those protocols to make sure that we can safely reopen and provide as many of those experiences as possible. Some things will continue to work very well virtually. We'll want to honor the gathering guidelines and recommendations about what we can safely do and support. But we're working very carefully with our partners throughout student affairs and student engagement to support all those activities. The union and the rec well facilities are very important to campus life, and so we're working very carefully about how to arrange those spaces to provide as much engagement and interaction with each other and within those pretty phenomenal facilities. So we'll be sharing more of that information as it becomes available.
Thanks very much, Jake. Again, we welcome your questions. Put them into the comment section on the website that you're looking at, and we'll get through as many as we can. Andre, I want to go back to you for this next question. When are students going to be selecting their courses for the fall?
Thanks, Charlie. Students will select during their student orientation appointments. So right at the point that students have their appointment and they're working with the orientation team, that's when they'll make their selection.
It's a far cry from when I went to school here and I had to run around campus to register in person at each of the departments. Chancellor, do you want to talk a little bit about SOAR while we're on that?
Yeah, I just want to note that all incoming students are expected to sign up for SOAR, which is our entry orientation period. We've typically done that on campus, and it's gotten a chance for everyone to come in to see campus if they haven't been here before, but this year it's virtual. And after that event, you'll learn more about campus, get a chance to sign up for your schedule, get a chance to meet with advisors, and learn more about student life as well. So if you haven't made your SOAR sign up yet, you need to do that and pick the days in the summer. It's like I should remember, it's either 2 or 3 days to really spend in orientation.
Thanks, Chancellor. It's an important point. We're getting a lot of questions, as you would imagine, about sports, fall sports, Badger football. It's an important part of the university experience for our students and our alumni. Chancellor, can you talk a little bit about what we think we might be able to expect regarding a fall sports season? What plans are going to be in place, and how are we going to keep student athletes safe?
I get asked this a lot. The short answer is I don't know the answer to this one. As some of you may know, athletic workouts, and we've got a number of the teams of those who voluntarily could come back here doing weight training and some very initial workout under very strict guidance and regulations. And the athletic department has been just a wonderful partner in laying out what they will do and how they're changing from their normal procedures to keep people safe and healthy. In terms of the sports this next fall, that is going to be worked out with the NCAA in conjunction with the Big Ten Conference and the individual schools. I very much hope we're going to find a way to play games, but it is going to require regular testing. It's going to require some changes in protocol and procedures. I don't know what's going to happen in terms of fans. That we're going to have to work out with the local and county health department as well as with the Big Ten. All the medical advice simply says the best way to spread this is to be indoors with people yelling. And that sure sounds to me like fans at a volleyball game or a basketball game. We are going to have to figure out what is safe and what isn't safe in terms of the fan experience. But I really hope that working with the NCAA and the Big Ten, we will figure out some ways to play the season.
Thanks, Chancellor. And I'm going to stick with you for this next question. Goes back to sort of the student experience. What decisions have been made, or where are we at in terms of Greek life? As you know, we've got a strong fraternity and sorority system at UW-Madison.
So the Greek organizations are independent of the university. We do not control them. We do not own the houses for those that have houses. Our Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs has been spending a lot of time, she and her staff, working with some of the Greek organizations. I'm sure many of those houses are going to operate. We are showing them all the protocols that we are following in our on-campus housing, and strongly recommending that they follow very similar protocols in their own housing. But again, we don't have direct control over that. And if your child is considering living in a Greek residence, this would be a good year to do some due diligence about what health protocols they're following and how well they're enforcing them. Of course, a lot of the national Greek organizations, which our chapters report into, are as concerned about this as we are. So we've got some good partners with the national Greek organizations. And, I think things will be a little different in Greek life, but I don't doubt that there will be Greek organizations on campus and active.
Great, thanks. Next question, I'm going to go to Jake, again, head of University Health Services. For many people, the pandemic has been really difficult. What sort of resources do we have on campus for students who may be struggling when they get here because of that? Mental health check-ins or other things?
Thank you, Charlie. That's a really important question. It's been difficult for many of us, and our students are certainly no exception. And so I want to make sure that the students recognize that we've continued to provide services throughout this pandemic period. Many of those services have pivoted to a virtual mode, and students seem to really be engaging and doing well in that model. We'll continue to do that in the fall. In addition, we will have face-to-face services. We have a variety of ways that students can engage. We can have on-call services available. We have scheduled appointments. We have more urgent and crisis appointments that we can schedule as well. So we have a variety of ways that you can engage. We have a number of groups that will continue to operate as well. So we'll have in-person and virtual services available to meet students that are both here in the community as well as those that are enrolled that maybe can't attend the campus.
Thanks very much. We'll go over to Jeff Novak, Director of University Housing, for the next question. As Jeff, as you've said, and as is clear in our Smart Restart website, we will have students on campus living in the residence halls. We expect the vast majority of those to be double occupancy, 2 students per room. Question is, if a roommate tests positive, how does the other student get quarantined as well, or how will that work?
Thank you, Charlie. Yes, great question. Immediately, we will test the roommate and consult with Jake and his team and our other health professionals. Right now, the plan would be that the student would stay in their room by themselves. The roommate would be moved to our isolation facilities. The student would be consulted with each day, monitored. They would self-monitor as well. And depending on any symptoms or immediately we hope to get within 24 hours that test result, dictate what the next step would be for the student.
Great. Jeff, I'm going to stick with you for this next question. As the Chancellor mentioned earlier, we'll be in person for many of our classes through Thanksgiving, but once we hit Thanksgiving, we're planning to transition to virtual classes for the final 9 days of classwork and for final exams. If a freshman is unable to go home for some reason, would they be allowed to stay in the residence halls through Thanksgiving and through the end of the semester?
Another good question. Yeah, right now we have not made the decision to close the residence halls following Thanksgiving, so they could remain. And if a decision does come where we may close, we certainly will have an exemption process for anyone that cannot return home. If home does not have a setting where you can get online and do your academics well, or just home is not the place for you. So people should not worry. You will have a place to live following Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Chancellor, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that there are some students who both can't and some who shouldn't go home at Thanksgiving. We've got international students who probably may not be able to go home because of visa reasons, won't want to. And we've got students who live in rural areas whose home is crowded and doesn't have good Wi-Fi, and they can't do studies there. And those are the students that ought to think about staying in what should be a greatly de-densified set of dorms. My guess is most students will go home and stay there. But if there are good reasons to stay on campus, we will make sure that you've got housing.
And I just add that we saw some of that at the end of the last spring semester when we had a number of students who could not go home or who were, for a variety of reasons, better off staying in the residence halls, and we were able to accommodate them. Let me go back to Andre Phillips, again, Director of Admissions and Recruitment. Andre, if an accepted student decides to take a gap year, will they have to reapply, or are they just automatically in the following year?
Thank you for that question, Charlie. For students who engage with us in our office and follow the protocols that we've established, as we discussed earlier, students will not have to reapply. There are check-in or touch points that we've had historically for students who take a gap year. We'll continue to work with them. They will not have to reapply.
And Andre, for those students who are planning to attend as freshmen, what should they be thinking about right now? If they have questions, should they be contacting you in admissions, or should they be working through SOAR?
If they've not made a final commitment, if they're still weighing, or even if they've committed and they have follow-up questions, those students should reach out to us. This sounds like a commercial, but at onwisconsin.edu. My team and I, we are ready to answer their questions, to walk them through, to unpack what their fall looks like based on, as Chancellor mentioned at the outset, and going forward as we learn more information. They should reach out to us, contact us. And also for students who are signing up for their SOAR or have questions about SOAR, they can reach out to us. We can connect them to student orientation where need be.
Thanks, Andre. And again, a shameless plug for a website. You can find a lot of information about what we're talking about tonight and our reopening plans at www.smartrestart.wisc.edu. Chancellor, let me go to you with this next question. And I don't think this is unique to the fact that we're in the middle of a COVID pandemic, but it's a question that students have oftentimes, and that is, my student's going to be a freshman on campus. It's a very large university. How do they find a community? Where do they find that small group that they're going to want to connect with early on?
Yeah, that tends to be the thing that incoming students worry the most about. And when you talk to students at the end of their first semester, they say, I shouldn't have worried. But, you do think about this. Let me talk about some of the ways in which you can connect. Obviously, many of our incoming freshmen are going to live in the dorms, and they're going to have a natural community just through that. They'll get to know a lot of students. Secondly, we do have options, and while they may have a little bit more virtual activity, a little bit fewer in person, we really encourage all of our incoming freshmen to think about how they can join in some of those student activities and meet some other students who they may not otherwise meet from very different backgrounds. Thirdly, and this is really important, we want all of our incoming freshmen to have some really good small group educational experiences, whether you're online or in person, but in person, if you're on campus, particularly in person. Some of our students participate in what's called first year interest groups, we call FIGs. About 25% of our students do that, and that's a small group that runs through the year focusing on a particular topic, and that often creates lifelong friendships. For those students who aren't in FIGs this year, we're offering 2 other opportunities that we think many students, and particularly freshmen, we hope will engage in. These are 2 what we're calling Wisconsin Experience classes. And these are classes that are going to have, a big, broad interest, have a online lecture, but then there will be regular small group meetings to discuss those lectures, to do some supplemental readings, and have small group discussions. And the two topics we're taking on this year in these Wisconsin Experience classes, one of them is going to be on pandemics. What do we know about pandemics? What are their effects? What do we learn medically? What's their economic impact? What's their social impact? How do the arts interpret pandemics? And so we're going to have one class on sort of what we're living through here and what we know about it historically and what we're observing. And the second class is going to key off of our Go Big Read, which is a book we pass out to all incoming freshmen. And this year, the Go Big Read is about the shootings in the high school at Parkland and how a group of high school students who lived through that turned this into a very strong political action movement. And the title of this is Tragedy to Activism. And it will start with the Go Big Read and the Parkland shooting, but of course it's very quickly going to talk about other tragedies that have turned into activism, and particularly with some discussion about what's happening right now and has happened historically with racial justice and civil rights movements. So I'm hoping every freshman is going to sign up for either one of those two Wisconsin Experience courses or one of those small group first year interest groups, so that they will be in these small groups with other students with some shared interests from all around the globe. And it's another way they'll get to know students.
Those sound like exciting courses. Maybe I'll audit one myself if I can. Jeff, do you want
You can watch the lectures.
Jeff, the House Fellows play an important role in making freshmen in the residence halls feel welcome as well. Can you talk just a minute about that?
Sure. Thank you. As the chancellor said, there is a natural element of community that just happens as a result of living in the halls. The nature of the ability to congregate and interact this year does change that a little. But our staff of over 200 students and professional in our residence life area are dedicated to making sure our students are going to get connected. We certainly know the key to satisfaction is getting connected, feeling part of a community. And we're making every effort how to do that in a safe, distanced manner. Again, going back to what the chancellor said, wearing face coverings is critical to stopping this spread. And by doing that, there are opportunities to get together, distanced, but still get together. Our staff's being trained how to offer support and guidance to students as they navigate these new questions, the fears that come along with all of this, and certainly anxieties. But we're here. Programs, our House Fellows are expected to reach out and make contact with each student, form those connections. 60% of our students do come in with a roommate choice, but we also know that 40 don't. We'll work very hard to make sure they're connected as well. So if you have a worry and your student isn't feeling connected, don't hesitate to reach out. We can follow up and make sure that we will get them connected.
Thanks, Jeff. We've got just a little over 10 minutes left, and I want to again remind people that they can look on our website at smartrestart.wisc.edu, and also the admissions website, which is on Wisconsin at admissions.wisc.edu. Jake, I want to go to you with a question. We've talked a lot about how we're keeping students safe here on campus. Can you talk a little bit about what we're doing to keep UW employees safe, the faculty and TAs that will be teaching our students, other workers that are on campus? How are we going to make sure that they're not spreading the illness?
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. And really the same expectations that we've set up for our students, we've also set up for ourselves. Well, we're asking, requiring people that when they're within the buildings or within spaces that are shared, that they wear a mask, that they practice regular hand washing, that they maintain social distancing wherever possible, and that they take full advantage of the testing that's available through the drop-in testing sites or other mechanisms that are available to them. We want people to self-monitor themselves for symptoms, and we'll provide the tools and resources to support that, both for our students and our staff and faculty on the campus. So we're all a part of this community, all have a responsibility, and so our students and our staff are all doing their part to support that environment. We're putting in places other adjustments or environmental changes to support that social distancing and that additional protection as well. So those are some of the measures that are in place, and we'll continue to do those and others.
Thanks, Jake. Let me stick with you for just a second. We talked earlier about the importance of physical activity in terms of people keeping up with feeling well and physical and mental health. We have, as obviously, a couple of recreation centers on campus. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the status of that, and particularly the new rec center that will be opening up before too long, hopefully.
Thank you, Charlie. And we know that staying active and engaged is really important to all of our mental health and well-being. And our students actually have told us that some of the most important reasons that they go to rec facilities or engage in activities is to connect with others on the campus. So we recognize the value of that as well. So that's a win-win when we can make both those things work. And we're also in a very exciting time for the campus. We're on the verge of finishing up and preparing to open a brand new facility in the Nicholas Center that will open up at the early part of the fall semester. And we're, of course, making adjustments about how that space can be used to adequately support our students, make sure they have an opportunity to take full advantage of that. And at the same time, we're also planning for another facility that will eventually replace the natatorium project, a facility that project will get underway this fall as well. But then stay tuned for more information about the NIC. And of course, we have some fabulous outdoor play fields that when appropriate, we can take advantage of those spaces as well, where we can maintain social distancing and stay engaged and stay active. And most importantly, stay well.
Thanks. We're doing our best to answer everyone's questions tonight. Thank you for sending them in. Of course, we don't have questions to all of your, we don't have answers rather to all of your questions, but we are working on it. And new things are happening all the time. For example, I just learned that our Office of Fraternity and Sorority Life will be hosting virtual opportunities for students and families to ask questions once they get a little bit further down the road with their planning. So look forward to that as well. Question next is, right now all admitted students should be working through SOAR, I believe. And if you can talk a little bit, Andre, about the handoff between admissions and SOAR, I think that would be helpful for people.
Sure. So for all students who've, been admitted, of course, and have made the wise decision to accept their offer of admission, there's an automatic process where students are then contacted to begin next steps. One of the next steps, obviously, securing a space within the resident halls, and at the same time to begin the orientation process, go through the advising to register for class, for your fall class. For students who may not have yet accepted their offer of admission, the clock is ticking. We would like for those students, if you have remaining questions about our process, as we suggested before, to reach out to us. But the moment that all of our admitted students say yes to the offer, the orientation handoff, if you will, start, and students will be contacted to begin securing the orientation date, their appointments, and advisement that will follow.
Thanks, Andre. And we'll mention as well, the Parent and Family Program is a wonderful resource for parents and families of UW-Madison students. It's a great place to gather information. There is a very active social media Facebook page that parents communicate with each other on, and Parent and Family Program will also host events both online and when we're able to in person over the course of the year. So if you're not familiar with the Parent and Family Program, once we get into the semester, I encourage students and parents rather to look at that. Chancellor, let me go to you with this question. We've talked about the fact that we'll have some remote delivery of instruction. Do we expect that to be synchronous or asynchronous?
So for those of you, most everyone has learned these terms by now, but synchronous instruction means that if the class starts at 11 in the morning, you've got to be on your laptop at 11 in the morning because that's when it's delivered. Asynchronous means that it's taped or pre-recorded in some way and you can access it at any time. That's something that individual instructors are working with our advisors on. There are many classes that will be delivered asynchronously. I suspect of virtual classes, but there are some classes that will be synchronous, partly because they want the students together and they want some of the exchange that goes back and forth. So that will vary a little bit, but many of the virtual classes are asynchronous, so you can access them at 2 in the morning if you want to.
Thanks, Chancellor. One more question for you, if I may. You've talked about the guidelines we'll have for students and others in terms of using face coverings and physical distancing and so forth. If students or others choose to ignore those guidelines, what's going to happen? So,
we have a lot of experience in a number of ways of basically trying to create a culture that does certain things, using peer pressure. It's really important that we get everyone to understand and be motivated for the reasons to do this. We're going to have a major marketing campaign that we're going to be running for both staff, faculty, students. The messages delivered might be slightly different. A little bit of preliminary evidence tends to suggest that students themselves don't feel very vulnerable about this, but they're willing to do things like masking or social distancing if they think it matters for the health of other people. So, we might message this a little differently to students than we do to others. If we actually have to resort to enforcement of some sort, we will have failed. But I will tell you, in the classroom, faculty have control of their classroom. And if they set a rule that says to be in this classroom, you have to be masked, that will have to be followed. And the faculty has the ability to simply kick you out of the class, to disenroll you and say, go take a class online if you don't want to follow the rules of this classroom.
And of course, we obviously have everyone's best interests at heart. As the Chancellor mentioned, we're working really hard with a lot of smart people from around campus and elsewhere involved in making sure that we have guidelines that are people that are easy to follow and that people will follow. One more for Jeff as we're getting close to wrapping up here. Could dorm assignments, res hall assignments, potentially change for upperclassmen who have already signed housing contracts?
Good question. We do not anticipate that. We are thankful for those who chose to return to live with us for another year or third or fourth, and we hope to keep you in the same space. As we're running out of time, I just want to reiterate, I know we don't have all the answers yet, but I can assure you that all of our staff and housing are committed to making sure this is the safest place that your student will live this year. Feel free to check regularly. 11 o'clock Thursdays, we have our own live stream for housing. And as the Chancellor just said, without everybody doing this together, we will not succeed. But I feel confident based on the questions that people have asked, the hard, difficult questions that you should be asking of us about what protocols and policies we are putting in place, that you and others are asking that of their student that's coming to live with us or be on campus this fall. What are they going to do their part to make sure we maintain a safe, great environment for everyone?
Thanks, Jeff. We're just about out of time. I want to go back to Chancellor Blank one more time and give her an opportunity to provide any final thoughts.
Thank you, Charlie, and thanks to everyone for joining us. As I say, I look forward to seeing many of you on campus, particularly the students. It's been a very strange and unusual spring and summer, particularly those of you graduating from high school. You can testify to that better than I can. And it's not going to be what many would consider a normal fall or winter. We are going to be operating, but we're going to be operating differently. But in my experience, when you as a community go through some of the things that we've gone through and will go through in the fall, there's often a sense of camaraderie. The sense of community sometimes gets closer. That people, this sense of we're in this together and we're going to make it work. And I'm hoping we can create that type of community and that type of culture this fall. So it will be different, but that doesn't mean it's going to be worse. It could even be better. So I look forward to seeing you all.
That's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you again for your questions and comments. Thank you for entrusting your students to us. We're looking forward to having a great year here at UW-Madison. A reminder to keep checking our website, www.smartrestart.wisc.edu, for updates. As I said, we're looking forward to a great fall. We're looking forward to seeing you in On Wisconsin.